Hello and welcome to another edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts. And on this particular episode, we're going to do another fat, bald perspective. I'm going to give you my thoughts of the season that was the first season of the Grand Tour. Now, this particular vehicle for Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and Richard Hammond was very well anticipated over the past couple of years after the whole fracas and this group kind of getting their big deal going to the internets and Amazon Prime. I was really looking forward to this, and they had a lot of time to work on it, but I do have a fair amount of problems with this program, and we'll get through the problems first before we get to the good stuff. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest problems I had, and that was I really thought this was going to be an all-new show. From all the interviews that these three were doing ahead of this program hitting the old interwebs, all they talked about was the fact that they were really worried about the BBC actually trying to come after them in a lawsuit situation for basically intellectual properties as far as what they used to do on the old BBC and Top Gear. But that really didn't happen. Basically what we got was a Top Gear 2.0. Several of the segments were nearly identical. They had their own track, their own lap time boards. Conversation Street was just basically the news. The only real new thing that we got in this particular program was the opening monologue segment that was actually done just thanks to the areas they were in as far as the tent situation was concerned. So that was my biggest complaint, that I really thought we were going to see something wild and new in this particular program. I knew the bulk of it was going to be the same, but just to go right after the segments, exactly what they were in Top Gear, I thought was weird. That being said, it could have been just a situation where they wanted to kind of stick it to the BBC for all the threats of lawsuits, and that being said, that doesn't seem to be a bad deal as far as I'm concerned. Now let's talk about that tent situation, because there was some struggles in that deal. You notice from some of the earlier episodes, it was very difficult with a very bright background from the tent actually being out in the daytime, that they actually had to really overly light some of the presenters inside of the tent itself, which did seem to wash them out a little bit. That's a trick that's actually very, very difficult to actually pull off. It was probably a very good concept. The sheer fact that they wanted to travel all over the place was pretty cool as well. To see this actually in my country was pretty doggone cool, at least on a couple of different occasions. But I love the fact that the tent wanders all over the place. It was just kind of a situation where they may be working on that. And you saw it get better and better as the year went on. Some of the other problems this thing had were some of the joke struggles that they actually had. The jokes were a little bit overly forced in some sections, and I know there's a different kind of humor, and humor is different to everybody else on the planet, and very specific to everyone on the planet, so I can understand some of those struggles that they were actually going through. The other thing was you really saw the amount of money that this program had in their disposal, because some of the jokes were way over the top with very, very expensive situations going on. Now, the other thing is one of the segments, that being the celebrity brain crash situation. That was a weird deal that kind of got old fast, even though every time James May said his catchphrase at the end of it, I laughed every time, so I guess it was somewhat worth it. But it is pretty interesting how much they spent to have those celebrities, and they never actually came on the show, because they definitely spent money for them to come in there. None of those celebrities got to promote anything, so which would have been the only reason they would have came over for free. So it was an interesting situation. That's where they decided to spend their money. Now, there was a couple of fan sites, Grand Tour fan sites, who had claimed that the BBC had actually sued them over the situation, but you know what? Unless they put a star in a reasonably priced car, there was no lawsuit situation as far as that deal was concerned. It was just basically somewhat of an excuse, so I'm calling a little BS on that situation. The Mike Skinner situation, I love the fact that they have a driver and he's doing lap time runs, but I really thought the Mike Skinner deal was an interesting deal. Now, I love Mike Skinner himself, because if you've ever seen him at the Goodwood Festival Speed hustling that Craftsman truck up the hill, or I guess I should say Camping World truck up the hill, he is impressive to say the least. And I thought he did a great job but I thought it would probably been more interesting if maybe they would have muffled him. You know, some of his commentary kind of trying to make him backwoods and redneck, if you will. I think were a kind of a weird combination, but you could have just kind of muffled him, maybe put a muzzle on him or something like that where he was trying to speak, but he just couldn't. Maybe a little bit more Stig-like, I guess you could say. That's pretty much the bulk of my complaints of this particular program. For the most part, this thing was pretty fantastic. I mean, the shooting, the editing, the filming itself was just as beautiful as it always is. Andy Willman and his group do an amazing job of filming this particular program. And it looks fantastic. And the out-of-tent segments, I thought, were always the best. Even though they did have a couple of them that strayed. Albeit, any episode of Top Gear or any season of Top Gear, they had some hits and misses in those particular programs as well. But for the most part, it was fantastically done and very enjoyable, very funny. It was beautiful to see the boys back together again, and that's the overlying deal. This show is still just as much fun as it's always been. So if you haven't given the old Grand Tour a try yet, you need to. If you have Amazon Prime, hook it up. You can binge watch every episode now. It's a dang good time. As far as the future of the program, I think you're going to see Season 2 be much better than Season 1. I think they got a lot of the kinks out of the show, even if it was kind of a carbon copy of Top Gear. And you're probably tired of me mentioning Top Gear in this deal, but if they wouldn't have basically ripped off the show, albeit they kind of made that show what it was, even though BBC does own those intellectual properties, that is the only reason why I continue to bring it up, is because I still thought they were going to do something brand new and shiny. The sheer fact of getting the three guys back together was a fun time. And like I said, I think Season 2 is going to be great. James May has already come out and said he'd probably only do 5 more years at doing this particular program if they can. So I'm assuming they got 2 more years left in the existing contract. They may add another extension for 3 more years, equaling up to 6 total years of this program, or 5 more years of this. If you love these guys, chances are you're going to love this show. If you're not a big fan, I'd probably just skip this show altogether. But you may want to give it a shot. It may change your mind, possibly. And that's all there was that I thought was worth talking about for this edition of Motor Cars Enthusiasts and the Fat Bald Perspective. Don't forget to like us over on the Facebook page. The link's down in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, you can do so at any time and get the first dibs on the brand new shows as soon as they come out. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again real soon.